Hey, so this is about my fifth go trying to record this video. I've been struggling with putting the words together. It's been very hard to really think linearly about the subject when it has been something that's affected me my entire life and is so multifaceted in all of its implications, but I really am trying to talk about mental health stigma. I know a lot of people probably won't watch this video. I know that if I posted a status, I probably would have gotten my thoughts heard a little more, but I didn't feel like there was any other appropriate way for me to talk about this than to articulate it. So I want to start with a couple cliff notes, so just making sure I have this all right. I don't want to re-record this for like the sixth time, I keep fucking up, so couple cliff notes that if anyone knows me, they probably know that I have these opinions and how they affect how I look at things, but just in case someone I don't know very well is watching this, probably would have turned it off by now, but oh, my girl Savannah hit me up. I love you, boo. So I strongly hold on to the belief that there is no such thing as objectivity, that objectivity is an abstract concept, that the idea of being objective was mostly created to validate traditional academic learning and research, and that when we think, and then also to improve our relationships by teaching us tactics like, oh yeah, always look at things from both sides and everything. I don't personally think that that's possible. I think that you can try to look at things from both sides. You can try to look at their side from your perspective, but that's what a lot of people are missing there, is that they don't realize that when you're looking at it from someone else's side, you're really still looking at it through your perception of what their side is like. So yeah, you can kind of put yourself in their shoes, but you putting yourself in their shoes is never leaving your brain. You're never actually putting yourself in their shoes is probably the most simple way that I could put it, because the way that our brain works is everything that happens to us, everything that we see, that we respond to, that we receive, all the emotions back and forth, all of that is created by our brain and processed by our brain, meaning that there's an endless loop going on in here that does not overlap with anyone else's. Like all your relationships are technically one-sided because they're technically all you. I'm not saying the other person doesn't exist, but you can't ever completely understand what that other person is going through. So I like to start off with that because I like to acknowledge that, because that is one of the core beliefs that I look at when approaching relationships, that I am completely aware that I am not objective in anything that I'm about to say. This is all only my own experience. I'm going to put my glasses on. And then the second note that I wanted to make is just that this is a subject that, as I said earlier, has affected me my entire life. It is a subject that is very dear to me in a very odd way, and it is a subject that is very emotional for me and is something that I hope to speak on more in the future. This is my first time really giving it a shot, so those are my two cliff notes. So going into talking about mental health stigma, so I'm going to talk about 3 silencing techniques that I believe are used by people when dealing with people with mental health that inflict cycles of violence towards people that are struggling with whatever internally. And I think that these techniques are very common. I can identify them in every single situation that I'm in when things like this occur, and I think that they're very common for other people as well, but I don't want to make assumptions about other people's scenario, but I'm just saying from my observations with other people, I've seen this as well. Well, the lighting just totally changed because my laptop screen turned off, but recording yourself is a weird concept. I digress. So yeah, these three, and I'm going to use examples of something that happened to me recently to talk about these three, because I think it's an easier way, and I can like kind of blend them in with the story of what happened. So I'm going to talk about like the story about what has happened to me the past couple days with mental health stigma, and then I'm going to like reveal these three things that I think people consistently use to keep us down and to keep us in a subordinate position, like through both of that. I hope that makes sense. So basically what happened to me is that I was in the a psych unit at a hospital for 4 days. I just got out yesterday morning, midday. It's been weird adjusting back to my house and everything, but so this all centers around that experience that I had. I'm not going to touch on why, because that's not necessary. That's my personal business, and frankly, if you didn't ask me while I was in the hospital, it's none of your business at this point. But okay, so, sorry, I'm getting my thoughts straight. So, I went into the psych ward for 4.5 days, pretty much, and I had a friend that was very supportive like the first couple days I was there, but never really called me, like didn't try to visit me, like them and their mom and another person that was my friend did come drive up and come to see me, but it was when I told them that they probably weren't gonna make it by the time visitors hours were over, and they didn't listen to me, and I told them not to drive up, and they didn't anyways. So essentially they didn't really do anything for me, you know, like they came up on a day when I told them they probably weren't gonna make it, and then because of that I didn't get any of the stuff that they were supposed to bring me. They didn't visit me, and they posted a selfie of themselves outside the hospital on Facebook, but didn't make any effort to actually get me the stuff they were bringing me, and didn't call me, didn't text me while I had my phone privileges, because I was on a unit where you could have your phone 3 times a day for 1 hour. Never tried to contact me, really. Yeah, so that was a little irritating, but it wasn't that big of a deal. I was like, okay, people live their lives. So then I asked one of these friends if they would be willing to come up and pick me up when I got released, and I'm not going to go into it past that, but it basically did not end very well, and it resulted in me being like, hey, okay, like, I don't really want to engage in this friendship right now. It's not healthy, and I probably did have a choice few, like, go fuck yourselves in there, because I know how I am when I'm angry. I'm not gonna disregard that. And I basically did end it though with like, if you're gonna respond with hostility, I really don't want to continue this. Like, I'm sorry that I'm angry, but if you could just drop it, and like maybe we could talk about it at another time. They responded by just like keeping it going, and then it pretty much just got to the point where I was like, go fuck yourself, you're not my friend, and then that was it, I thought. Next, I'm getting messages from this person's mom antagonizing me, and this is how I'm going to get into one of the first techniques that I think are used against people with mental illness that promote mental health stigma, which is being treated like your emotions and your opinions aren't valid. His mom messaged me, and she goes, it's not a fucking contest, you know, and she said some other shit involving stuff I'm not talking about on camera. And she was basically just trying to say that, like, I was trying to make this into a contest of, like, of my friends of who was doing the most for me. And I was like, that's so fucking absurd. I would never do that. Like, that's not what this is about. This is about me trying to get out of the hospital and go home. Like, I really don't understand why you're messaging me about this, blah, blah, blah. And then she just starts replying to everything I say with stop. Just one word, stop. Over and over and over again. Literally everything I said, she would just say stop. Like, no, and the only reason I kept going is because she was antagonizing me, and I knew it's what she was doing, so I started telling her off for it, and that plays directly into the first of the 3 things that I'm going to talk about. That is treating people with mental illness when they're upset about something like it's just a symptom of their mental illness, and that you don't have a legitimate reason to be upset over something, and that your emotions are invalid and you're just unstable. That's exactly what that is. And that is something that has been used to keep us in a subordinate position and to make it easier to undermine our struggles and also make it easier to dehumanize us and treat us like shit in the psychiatric health field by acting like we essentially can't even make our own decisions, or when we do, they're not going to be the correct ones. So then that plays into what happens after this. So after I pretty much told him and his mom, you know what, I don't want you guys in my life, you're antagonizing me in the hospital, this is ridiculous, they decided to call my 76-year-old grandmother, who didn't know I was in the hospital, who I either was going to talk to about it at a later date or not talk to about it at all, which is my decision as an adult with my medical history. Like, she doesn't need my medical history. I don't understand. I was in there like anyone else would be in a hospital. It's not necessary. So they called my 76-year-old grandmother, this friend of mine, and his mother, and they told my grandmother why I was in the hospital. They told her I was still in the hospital and I was trying to hide it from her. The irony of this is that I had been released that day and I was okay. I got okayed to go home. I was okay that I was safe. Yeah, don't get that. But, so I get a call from my grandmother crying and sobbing on the phone, and I get a text message and she's all worried about me, and so I knew immediately who had called her, but I called her anyway and asked. She told me she got so upset that she hung up the phone, but I got the phone number and I know who it is, and it was my friend's mother. And this plays into another silencing technique, which is people treating people in my position or similar positions to that, that we are children, that we are unable to make our own decisions. It's like the first step is when you invalidate our emotions and opinions, and then you jump to deciding that we're children and that you need to do things for us, that we're unable to make our own decisions, which is dehumanizing. I work and go to school full time, and I'm normally fine, but you want to tell me because I had a medical emergency that all of a sudden I'm a child that needs to have their phone calls made for them, that needs to have their personal business told to their family members out of spite, you know, because I know that these two people are going to try to say, like, oh no, it was out of care and concern, like, she was freaking out and we really wanted her family to know she was there. No. You've known me for 10 years. You knew that calling my family was going to escalate the situation. You knew that it was going to make things really hard for me when I got out of the hospital. And you knew it was going to cause drama. And that's why you did it. You did it out of spite. You purposely created a situation that did not need to be there, that is really messing up my healing since I got out of the hospital. You purposely created a situation you knew would be toxic, you knew would be negative, and you knew would not be effective for me in my recovery because you were bitter that I decided I didn't want you in my life anymore. And when you respond like this, can you really blame me for making that decision? So yeah, we have silencing of emotions and feelings, we have treating us as if we are children, and then we're going to jump to the third tier, which digresses from this a little bit, but not really, which is why my family didn't know that I was in the hospital. My family didn't know that I was in the hospital because my mental illness has always been a joke to them. It's never been something to be taken seriously. Just a few examples of ways people talk about it in my family. She doesn't just have she just has mood swings because she's a hormonal teenager. I'm bipolar. She's just sad all the time because she doesn't know how to look at the bright side of things. She just has anxiety attacks. I don't really think that she even gets those. So that's just some examples of what I've heard. Now, my grandmother hasn't said these things, but my grandmother is a passive bystander. And to me, that's pretty much exactly the same thing. Like, when you're hearing people say these things to me and you're not doing anything about it, when you're hearing me find out that people have said these things and you invalidate me being upset over it, you're pretty much just as bad as the people saying them, because you're saying that it's okay that they think things like that they disregard something that is actually a medical diagnosis that is going to affect me for the rest of my life. And so it's basically the erasure of the mental illness, it's the erasure of the psychiatric field, it's the erasure of all of this, and just saying, oh, it's all bullshit and you should just get the fuck over it. So yeah, I'm not sure if this video really went the way I wanted it to. As I said, I'm really all over the place, but I'm hoping that this will be the one. I'm hoping I touched a few points. Maybe they'll resonate with somebody else here. I'm hoping I didn't get a little emotional and aggravated talking about this, but I am very emotional and aggravated, so it probably showed. And if anyone actually watched this all the way through, I'm looking at the clock and it's almost 16 minutes long. You are my fucking hero, and thank you for listening to my bullshit ramble.